Hello everyone, this is Jasmine, aka Gladiatorinsweats. I'm outside. I'm actually on vacation in Hawaii, and so you'll have to excuse the noise of the ambiance of all the birds and the cars driving by. So excuse that. But I felt like I just really wanted to make a video, and it just dawned on me. I had never actually really talked fully about why I was deciding to let go of astrology, or just really let go of different systems that I had been using to better understand myself and realize, who it is that I want to be. And so I guess I want to preface this with this not being a bashing of astrology, see the chickens, or this being about astrology having no merit or no value, because that's completely not my stance on this. Rather, it's just where I'm recognizing that the tools that we use, through our journey, we don't necessarily have to hold on to them the entire time that, through our entire experience. So, my goodness, hopefully you guys can hear me, and I'll try and keep this short and sweet then. So, I guess just to try and get to the very heart of what it was that I was feeling that wasn't resonating with me was the fact that it feels very fatalistic in the way that sometimes we use it. Sometimes we use our natal charts as, oh, well, this is who I am, and this is all that I am. And this sort of expressing of like, this is who I am, and that's my blueprint. And while I do sort of see astrology as like it does provide you a sort of blueprint to understanding yourself, or for me, understanding the psyche, I see it really more as like a beginner's map. I really see it more as like, this is your current terrain, if that makes sense. Where I feel like we have the choice and we have the experience, the opportunities here to expand outside of our natal charts, to expand past what it is that we deem ourselves to be, or the ways in which we perceive ourselves to be. And so that's one of the things that I started to recognize, was that I just started to feel like I was more than my chart. I started to feel that, well, that, and also that the meaning that we place upon a chart is dependent upon ourselves, and dependent upon, what sort of perspective we're going in it with in the first place. Like, it's very dependent upon the user, which, again, these aren't to say these are good or bad or whatever, but these are the things I started to notice. And so for me, astrology was always like a self-study for me. So I found that to be very, very beneficial, because I was working with my own mind. I was working with what was coming through for myself, as opposed to really working with like someone else looking through my chart and seeing things through their lens. Which, that's, again, not to say that that's bad or anything, but I just start to feel that things are much more resonant when it was me, and when I began to interact with others with astrology. We all have different perspectives and different ideas of what this and that mean, and that's the beauty of it, right? That's the beauty, is that it can paint whatever sort of picture it is that you're intending to really look for. But in and of itself, that's sort of, for me, I won't say a con, but something where like the reflection changes depending upon the view that you look through it at. So if you're looking through it through a lens that maybe isn't serving you, or maybe it's not even really getting you where you need to be, it can feel more detrimental. For an example, like within my natal chart, you would see Sun conjunct the South Node. So depending upon who you talk to, that can be an amazing thing, or that can be completely like terrible, and no one wants that in their chart. And it's these sorts of discrepancies for me that made it not like true for me. It didn't hold true at a deeper soul level for me, where like, because there was just so many different ways in which you can see things, um and I just didn't feel like that resonated with me so much, to be able to like compartmentalize myself as well as other people. So I guess I'll step into like, even for other people, when I've done a few chart readings for other people, and it resonated with them, and they felt like it was accurate and all of that. And so I always bounce between this concept of like, is it useful, or is it something that I find to be too limiting for myself? And so I guess what I'm starting to recognize for myself is that I am able to intuit a lot of what it is that I can find out through a chart. Like, I don't actually need a chart to really get to the heart of things with people. I can talk to them, and I know how to ask the right questions to be able to get to the heart of what it is that we're really hoping to discuss or bring to the fore for us or for them. So I guess for me, I just found it wasn't, I guess, as powerful for me as other different techniques have been for me or have become for me. So I guess that's a few of the reasons. So I guess to try and label, like, one, I felt like it was too limiting, and two, I just started to find myself gravitating towards other tools. So that's also part of the reason. And so I guess, like I said, I want to keep this short, and I keep looking because I'm just trying to make sure I have my glasses on. So I guess the way I see it is that we're all parts of the zodiac. And so I think we can learn so much in learning about, whatever different characteristics that we feel we're bringing through these planets or these archetypes. And I feel like it is definitely a beautiful system, and I definitely find it still very useful for many people. So it's not something where I'm just like, oh, astrology sucks or any of that. But I do feel like we get caught in these archetypes. We begin wanting to not just label ourselves with these things, but then we sort of like attach these labels to other people. And I feel like even then we're not really able to connect with people in a more authentic way, because we've created these meanings, and not just created those meanings, but then attached our own sort of judgments to those meanings. So for example, like, you can see a popular thing to do now is like, oh, well, this sign doesn't do well with this sign, or this sign is bad, or this sign is bad in men, or like, there's different ways in which you can see how we apply these same judgments that we already have, and we just use spirituality to kind of make it woo-woo. And I use woo-woo to really prove my point of what, not prove my point, but to establish, like, to just make it seem like since it's spiritual, it's better. But if we're still judging people and we're still categorizing people, it's still not closer to oneness to me, and it's still not closer to God. So I guess that's another one of those things for me that really started to irk me. And I mean, it has always irked me, but it has begun to bother me even more so, because we really create these just categories. It's what we do, we do it with nature, so we can better try and understand how they relate to each other. And so I see how that is relevant within astrology as well. But again, I feel like it can become the slippery slope where we attach, who we are to these, meanings or to these labels. And I just started to feel myself wanting to gravitate away from that. Like, I don't really label myself or see myself as a Gemini, although that's what some may say. And this actually brings me to another one of my issues, which is the consistent debating about what system is quote unquote right or wrong. And so it's just like, all of these systems were created and based upon time anyway. And so for me, when I find myself sort of not so connected to the concept of time anymore, the whole idea that, like, I have to do certain things at a certain time, or because this is what it says in the chart for the day, then that must be what I'm going to feel today. Like, it's just all of these things, like these rules and routines, like, we just like them. We like rules and routines, and we like this. But I just find that, again, these things just felt too limiting to me. It just felt too limiting. I don't connect with, like, oh, Sunday is the day of the sun, and so that's the day that I do this. Like, I just don't connect with the days of the week. I don't connect with time in that way anymore, especially. So I just find myself, or I found myself, just not really, looking to astrology for some sort of explanation of what's going on. I just started to feel myself going more within and getting to know myself, and really hearing my inner self speaking to me, as opposed to having to look externally for some signs and to put things together. So, oh, but back to the whole concept of like the debating over which is which and which is better. I feel like they're all useful. Like whether you do Vedic or you do tropical or you do 13 sign astrology, they all have their uses, I feel. I feel like they all can show you something different. But I feel like they're all just pieces of the same puzzle. And I feel like to claim that one tool is going to complete the puzzle, or that one tool is the puzzle and the rest of these tools don't belong within the puzzle, it just feels very just not true for me. And I just didn't want to be a part of I didn't want to be a part of that either. So I guess just ultimately the whole thing for me has just been like, I just feel myself expanding to include much more and to question much more than what I was questioning when I was just sitting within the system. And not just that, but then within someone else's meaning. Like, for example, when we have like books or people have their websites or whatever their content is explaining, what they feel like this particular placement means, all of it is really dependent upon like that person or that perspective, or that point of view from which they're viewing. And so if that's not your point of view, or that's not like your vantage point, then it's not going to resonate, or it might not resonate. And so then for me, I had to go through this whole process of finding people whose work did resonate with mine, that felt more with the way that I would use the astrology. And that's just how I had been using it. And so I guess I just feel like you have to have a lot of discernment. And that's sort of what I discovered within not just astrology, but within any of these systems, within any of these quote unquote, schools of thought, is that discernment is everything, because there is no right or wrong. There is no this is going to work for everyone. Everything's going to work differently for everybody. And that's also another thing I'm recognizing too. And so, one person might say astrology doesn't work for me, therefore it's bunk, while one person says, it works for me and it's amazing, and so I feel like everyone should learn astrology. So it just depends on where you come from. And so I'm just starting to feel myself become a bit more like unbiased about it, and finding myself not just with astrology, but with everything. I'm feeling just like different strokes for different folks, and that's with everything. And so I just started to find myself gravitating more towards what feels simplest for me, which is being within the now, which is experiencing what's going on within the now, and understanding how is that relevant to me, if it's relevant at all, and going from there. And maybe that's because I've done so much of the self-realization work through astrology that I can feel confident enough to let it go. So maybe that's even the case where it was that amazingly precious of a study for me that I actually am able to let it go, because I feel like I've gotten all I needed to get out of it. And so, it depends on which way you look at it. I feel like it's a little bit of both. I feel like I feel limited by it, but also feel like I feel limited by it because I've gotten to the point where I don't need it anymore. And so I know this is a little rambly, so I guess I'm just going to end it here, just so I can sort of close this with the whole theme of this being about, you can choose and decide at any time if a tool isn't going to work for you anymore, or if it doesn't resonate with you anymore. You don't have to completely say it's bunk or it's trash. You don't have to do any of that. You can thank it for what it's done for you and release it. And that's what I've done. Like, I gave away all my astrology books. I took down my astrology calendars. I haven't looked at them in a minute. When I even do I still tend to do like full moon and new moon sessions for myself, more so for just the consistent sitting down with myself. So I just like to use that as a marker for when I do those times. But for me, it's less dictated by, oh, this is going on at this set time, so I need to do this right now. there's tons of times where I do a full moon ritual, new moon ritual in the middle of a moon cycle. Because for me, it does not matter. And so what I'm realizing is that not only does it not matter, but that everything is based on our beliefs. So if we feel powerful enough that we don't need that, then we might not need it. And that's what I've been experiencing within my own life, is that things don't have to happen on a time schedule or some quote unquote time schedule that we believe it has to happen on. And so I just started to recognize, like, it doesn't really matter. It matters, but then it doesn't. It's very paradoxical, the way that I'm starting to experience life and the way I'm starting to see things. And so with the nature of paradoxes, I feel like in that minutes of, like, I don't know, and I don't have to know everything at all times, and I don't have to add meaning to things at all times. I don't have to, like, look for meaning in everything. I can allow myself to be more in the flow of things, allow meaning to come as it comes, allow messages to come as it needs to come to me, as opposed to feeling like I need to, grasp for something. Because as I feel like, if you're following my stuff, you tend to know, when we grasp at things, it pulls farther away from us. And so I guess that's what I started to recognize, is the more that I tried to look for deeper meaning in things, the more I felt bombarded by just our own beliefs and our own myths and all of these things that we believe about, numbers, or things that we believe about demons, things we believe about anything. So I guess all of this to say is that when we can get to the heart of, like, why it is that we believe what we believe, and if we can decide or determine whether that's serving for us anymore or not, then we can let it go or not. And so this is essentially what I did, was I recognized that it wasn't serving me any longer to live in this very strict sort of, like, astrology bubble, and so I let it go. And since then, I find myself just expanding more. I find myself getting to know myself in ways that astrology just could not help me understand, or any system could help me understand. Sometimes you just have to be within. Sometimes all the tools that you need are right here. And so that's also what I've been experiencing. So I said I wasn't going to ramble, but I did. So excuse me for the rambling, but I really do hope that this maybe spoke to you a little bit, or maybe you can kind of resonate, whether it's with astrology, or you find yourself even within, like, a religion, and you find that it doesn't really fit you anymore, or like within a certain school of thought that doesn't fit you anymore. We're free to choose differently anytime. And it doesn't have to be about us being quote unquote wrong necessarily, but just we choose differently and we decide to see differently. So that's just the way that I feel about it, is that the power in our choice of perception, I feel, is stronger than just many, many other things. I don't find myself needing to do, very complex rituals. I don't find myself needing to do a lot of, like, work in that type of way, because I find that I'm able to access most of it, if not all, within, and working with the elements within that are a part of us at all times: the air within our breath, the earth of our body, the water of, the water within our body and our blood, the fire of our spirit, of our passion, all of these things. And so yeah, I guess I'm just gonna end it there, because I see this going off on a tangent. So all that to say, I hope you guys are doing well. And I apologize if you've been following my channel since, like, a year ago, where I started off mainly focused on, like, astrology and tarot. And while I still do work with tarot, I find myself doing a lot more clear conduit channeling. I find myself doing a lot more writing, finding myself doing a lot more of just really tuning into source, and then being able to just speak from wherever it is in my heart that I feel needs to be spoken about. So, and that's what's been working for me. So yeah, just look forward to more, I guess, talks. This is a bit more rambly than I would have preferred it, or the way I would like to do most of my videos, but I do want to come forth with a lot more content as far as just sharing, my thoughts on things, the things that come to my mind as far as what I am observing in the human collective and within my own life, and just being able to share what it is that I see from that, because I work a lot with the law of reflection and being able to see what's going on and what it is that I need to see in that moment. So that's really what I do here. So yeah, thank you so much. If you did listen to all of this, thank you for supporting my channel. If you're subscribed, or even if you're not subscribed, but you're, watching and offering me your presence, thank you for doing so and for sharing the space with me. So yeah, until the next one, I hope you guys, again, have a great weekend, whenever this reaches you. And until the next one, bye guys.